was June 25th of the year of 2018. June 25th of 2018 is a day that I will never forget. That day, I think, is embedded in my brain, and it's engraved on my heart. Because you see, that day, June 25th of 2018, is the day that I lost my youngest brother, James Wilson Dean, to suicide. Hello everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Catherine Dean. And for the next few minutes, I want to share with you some things that I've learned since June 25th of 2018. You see, when I left James's service in Virginia and left the family and came back here to Texas where I live, I really had a difficult time wrapping my head around why I had not seen that coming. After all, I had spoken with James at great length on the phone about 15 hours before he committed suicide. And I can tell you that I've often wondered then and since then if I had educated myself just a little bit or had some type of awareness, more awareness about suicide and some of the risk factors, some of the signs, would that have made a difference for James? And I can tell you that I've come to accept, I've had to accept, that I will never know the answer to that question. But I can tell you that I also never want anyone who is listening and watching this video to ever wonder or ask yourself that painful question. Suicide is, in my mind, it is a public health dilemma, a public health crisis, actually. And it has long-lasting and harmful effects on individuals, on families, and on communities. And I sincerely hope that no one watching this video will ever even be touched even closely or even remotely by suicide, because it's a really painful thing. But the good news is that it's preventable. And the number one thing that we can do to prevent suicide is to become aware, know what the signs are, know what the resources are, and take appropriate action. That's the number one thing that we can do to prevent suicide. Knowing that and educating myself after the fact, I took on a project that I now call the James Project. And that, of course, is to honor and remember my brother, James Wilson Dean. And this project is all about what I'm doing here. This is the very first video, I hope, in what will be a series of videos that will be educational for different age groups and different topics as they relate to suicide and those who are affected by suicide. So I invite you to take the next few minutes with me and just learn just a little bit. I'm just going to touch on a few things that I think are important, but basic, but very important things. And you just never know. This little bit of knowledge that I'm going to share with you may just save a life one day. The first thing that I learned about suicide was that in 2018, there were 48,344 confirmed deaths by suicide in the U.S. alone in that 1 year. My brother was just one of those. There were another almost 1.2 million confirmed attempts in the U.S. alone in 2018. I'm pretty sure that with the challenging circumstances under which we're living right now, that those figures have not gone down. So time will tell. We'll see those soon enough, I'm sure, but I don't think so, folks. I don't think so. I think we need to take action, strong action, and take action now. But being aware is the first thing that we all can do. I also learned that suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in all age groups. And it's the second leading cause of death in the age group 10 to 34 years of age. I also learned that suicide knows no socioeconomic barriers. It affects virtually all age groups, all religions, all races, and all cultures. And talking about the risk factors, I want to give you all just a few of the risk factors that increase someone's risk for committing suicide. And I want to say, first of all, that by having one of these, being one of these factors that would increase your risk, or even multiple risk factors, does not mean that someone is going to commit suicide or even think about committing suicide. As a matter of fact, the opposite is true. Most people will not, even if they have these risk factors, but it's important for you to know what they are. So we'll go through just a few of them. One is, if the person has ever attempted suicide before, their risk factor is higher than the average, okay? If they themselves or an immediate family member has a history of mental health disorder or illness, especially clinical depression, if they have a family history of, or they themselves have been a victim of long-term trauma, childhood trauma, maybe sexual abuse, if they have a history in their family of physical abuse and violence, their risk is greater for suicide. If they have a history themselves or in their immediate family with substance abuse or alcoholism, if they have barriers, let's say, to mental health treatment, such as no insurance, their risk is greater. Their risk is greater if they have a public figure, a media figure, for example, who is someone that they look up to, who recently commits suicide. Let's say Robin Williams. I'm a big Robin Williams fan. And when Robin Williams committed suicide, it greatly affected me. So anyone who is greatly affected by that is at a higher risk. Or if an immediate family member commits suicide, within the next few weeks, the next few months, it's likely that someone in that immediate family may also commit suicide, or their best friend, or one of their coworkers. The other thing that it puts us in a higher risk category is just being, and I found this very interesting, being in the age group 15 to 24 or over the age of 60. Just being in those age groups puts you at a higher risk. And last but not least, your genetic makeup. That can, it determines everything pretty much for us, but, it can hurt us or it can help us. And you may have a gene, for example, that predisposes you to be someone who handles loss and hardship really well. And if you're a person who handles loss and hardship really well, great. You're probably below average in that category to be at a risk for suicide. But you're going to be at a higher risk for suicide if you get the gene that puts you at a higher risk. And since I mentioned loss, that's another one that I don't think I mentioned, but anytime someone has a tremendous loss of a relationship, loss of a child, loss of a job, loss of finances, that puts that person at a higher risk for suicide. Let's talk some more about the signs, because interestingly, 80%, over 80% of the time, 80% of all the people who've committed suicide have given us behavioral clues, if they didn't actually come out and tell us verbally that they were thinking about killing themselves. And in my case with my brother, he had attempted suicide before, just a few months before. And I knew that he was in a bad place. But I still didn't think he was going to kill himself. You know why? Because there's that crazy myth out there that says, hey, people that talk about it, they never do it. Don't worry, if they're talking about it, that's a good sign they're not going to do it. Not true. That is the biggest lie that has to do with suicide that you will ever hear. That's the truth. It is a huge lie. If someone is talking about committing suicide, pay attention, take them very seriously. Very, very seriously. Do not leave that person's side. If you get that sign and they come out and tell you, hey, I'm thinking about hurting myself, you need to really, really pay attention. Another sign would be a behavioral clue, I should say, would be if the person's eating or sleeping habits have changed dramatically. Eating more, eating less, sleeping more, sleeping less. That's something to watch out for. Another sign could be if they take risks that could lead to death. Like, let's say all of a sudden they start driving 110 miles an hour on the freeway and zipping in and out of cars like a maniac. And that's not usually what they do. Obviously, at that moment, they had a disregard for life. I would be concerned about that. Pay attention, especially if they have other signs and symptoms going on at the same time, and risk factors. If they seem to be saying goodbye or putting their affairs in orders, maybe they're writing a will, or maybe they're changing their will, pay attention. If they're ordering stuff online, like chemicals and ropes and things like that, pay attention. And I don't mean to offend anyone in the NRA, or certainly not any Texan, because almost everyone here in Texas owns guns, but just owning a gun and having that in your home increases the risk for anyone in your home to commit suicide, because they have access to lethal means. So just be aware of that. Another sign or symptom or risk factor would be as if someone all of a sudden got diagnosed with a terminal illness or physical illness that has debilitating effects or extreme pain. All of those things are risk factors and signs. Reach out to the person. Reach out to the person. If you know someone that you're afraid, you get the feeling that they may be doing something to hurt themselves, come out and ask that person. Ask them sincerely, honestly, ask them with love, ask them privately, in private. Show them that you care. Listen without judgment. That's a big one. Listening without judgment. Be direct in your communication, but listen without judgment, and avoid giving advice and avoid minimizing their problems. Things that we shouldn't say are things like, oh, hey, I've had that happen. That's no big deal. You'll get through that. Because that's not necessarily true. Not everybody's going to be able to get through the same things. So listen without judgment. Encourage the person to get professional help, to seek treatment. Take them there. I don't care if you've got to take them to the police station. Don't leave them alone, ever. Don't leave that person alone. And encourage them to seek treatment. To see a counselor, to see their doctor, to see someone, to call the National Suicide Hotline or the text to the crisis line, something with some professional help. Take every single clue very, very seriously. Remove all lethal methods from the home. Help them do that and create a plan with that person if you can. And down below, I'm going to give you some national resources. Know what your resources are. Know what they are nationally. Know what they are locally, statewide. Know what's available for you. The resources I'm providing below are just a couple of the big ones that are available. They're free. They're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Use them. They're there for all of us. There's also some support for family members and friends of people who have attempted suicide or who have committed suicide, and I will also leave that at the end of this film. I will also, in closing, thank you all again for listening to an uncomfortable topic, and I will also ask you to subscribe, if you will, to my YouTube channel, Catherine Dean, The James Project, is how it's listed. So it's my name, Catherine Dean - The James Project. Thank you all again. I look forward to our next video and our next meeting. Bye for now.